Sorry, kid, but this is my seat, the man said, barely glancing up from his glass of champagne. His voice was clipped, dripping with irritation like I'd interrupted something important. I stood there holding my boarding pass, feeling 100 pairs of eyes on me as the plane filled up. Sir, I said calmly, this is seat 2A. You're in my seat. He finally looked up, his sharp blue eyes scanning me from my sneakers to my hoodie, pausing just long enough to smirk. No, son. This is my seat. Maybe you misread your ticket. His tone made it clear he wasn't about to move. I glanced toward the flight attendant nearby, a tall blonde woman with perfect posture and a tight smile. Her name tag said, Heather. Ma'am, there's a mistake, I said, showing her my ticket. This seat is mine. Heather barely glanced at the paper before turning back to him. Is everything okay, Mr. Whitfield? He said smoothly, leaning back in his seat like he owned the whole cabin. This young man seems confused. I'm sure his seat is somewhere in the back. Heather's smile tightened. She looked at me, her eyes flicking over my hoodie, my dark skin, my age. Why don't you let me find you a seat in economy, sweetheart? This must be a mix-up. She gently touched my shoulder, steering me away like I was a lost kid wandering where I didn't belong. I could feel the stares, the whispers, the unspoken question. How could someone like him possibly afford first class? My throat tightened, but my mom's voice echoed in my head. Never let them see you lose your cool. Dignity is non-negotiable. Fine, I said softly, handing her my boarding pass. Find me a seat. She looked relieved. The man smirked, and I followed her down that narrow aisle, walking past curious glances, a few smug smiles, and the weight of every assumption pressing down on me. She stopped at the very last row, pointing to a cramped middle seat in front of the bathroom. Here you go. Only one left. I squeezed past two large passengers, slid into the seat, and stared at the scuffed tray table in front of me. Nobody saw the flicker of fire in my eyes. I'd been underestimated before. This wasn't new, but tonight they'd remember my name. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying. 3 messages. One to my assistant. Flight 227 seating issue. Code Bluebird. Another to the head of operations, concerning service behavior. We'll explain later. And one to legal. Document everything. The doors hadn't closed yet. I had time. I tucked my phone away and glanced out the tiny window, catching the frantic motion of ground crew. Something was happening. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. The plane still hadn't moved. Passengers started murmuring, annoyed about the delay. Heather's polished voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor technical issue. Thank you for your patience. In first class, the man who'd stolen my seat leaned back, sipping champagne, completely at ease. He didn't notice the 3 sharply dressed airline officials boarding the plane. He didn't notice the tension ripple through the cabin as one of them whispered something into Heather's ear, draining the color from her face. Where is he? The man demanded in a low voice. Heather stammered, In 42E. Back row. The official's jaw clenched. He strode toward the back with a determined gait. Passengers craned their necks, sensing drama. I sat calmly as he approached, hands folded. Mr. Carter, he said, his voice respectful. I'm Amanda Reyes, Director of Customer Relations. Would you please come with me? I nodded, stood up and followed her past curious faces and raised phones. By the time we reached the front, the whispers had turned into a low hum. The lead official, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, stood waiting. Mr. Carter, he said solemnly on behalf of Atlas Air, I want to apologize for this unacceptable treatment. Your seat will be restored immediately. Gasps rippled through the cabin. The businessman in 2A frowned. What is going on? Who is this kid? The official's eyes hardened. This kid is not only a valued guest, sir, he is the majority shareholder of this airline. The man's face drained of color. Passengers whipped out phones, Googling my name. Recognition spread like wildfire. Wait, is that the tech prodigy? Someone whispered. The boy who sold his company for billions? Heather stood frozen, her professional mask crumbling. The man scrambled for excuses. I didn't know. That's exactly the problem, I said quietly, finally speaking. My voice carried through the stunned silence. That seat was mine, whether you knew who I was or not. Applause broke out from somewhere in coach. Cameras flashed. Hashtags exploded online. In the time it took for security to escort him off the plane, the story had gone viral. Seat justice. Hashtag black excellence. Atlas Air shame. Minutes later, the CEO himself boarded the aircraft. Thomas Reynolds, an intimidating figure in an expensive suit, walked straight up to me and extended his hand. "Mr. Carter," he said with gravitas, "I am deeply sorry. This will be corrected immediately." Heather tried to apologize, trembling. Reynolds' voice was ice. "Ms. Wallace, you'll be removed from duty. We'll discuss your future employment later." She packed her things, eyes shiny with tears, while Maxwell Whitfield, Mr. Champagne, stormed off, his once perfect confidence shattered. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Passengers clapped as I reclaimed 2A, but I didn't smile. I just slipped my headphones on, signaling I'd had enough attention for one day. Then a tap on my arm. I turned to see a little black girl, maybe 12, clutching a notebook. "Excuse me," she whispered. You're my hero. I'm learning to code too." That got me. I smiled, asked her what language she was learning. "Python," she said shyly. I signed her notebook and told her, "Keep going. The world needs your ideas." She returned to her seat, beaming, and I leaned back, feeling a heavy truth settle in. My life had just changed forever. By the time we landed, news vans crowded the terminal. Social media was on fire. Maxwell was trending for all the wrong reasons, and Atlas Air was scrambling to save face. My phone buzzed non-stop messages from my mom, my PR team, even government officials asking if I was okay. I never wanted fame. I just wanted to build cool things, solve puzzles. But this was bigger than me. That night I sat in a hotel room with my mom on video call. She looked at me with that steady nurse's gaze I'd known all my life. "You handled yourself with grace," she said softly. "I'm proud of you. But now you have a choice. You can let this blow over, or you can use it to make a difference." 6 months later, I stood in front of a renovated community center in my old neighborhood. A sleek sign read, "Carter Innovation Foundation." Behind me, rows of computers hummed and kids who looked like me typed lines of code. "Welcome, future innovators," I said into the mic, the crowd cheering. The incident on Flight 227 had sparked a movement. Airlines across the country adopted a passenger Bill of Rights, inspired by what happened that day. Heather, the flight attendant who once dismissed me, now toured as a speaker on unconscious bias, sharing her story to help others see their blind spots. Even Maxwell showed up one afternoon, humble and apologetic, telling me he'd been volunteering with minority entrepreneurs, using his skills to lift others. Somehow that one humiliating moment turned into something bigger, a ripple that became a wave. But here's the thing. Change is slow. Even now, when I board a plane, I catch those glances. People still judge by age, by skin color, by a hoodie. Maybe they always will. But I've learned that dignity isn't given, it's claimed. The other day, I was flying to Boston, first class as usual. A little boy, maybe 10, boarded with his mom. He was nervous, clutching his ticket like a lifeline. The flight attendant smiled warmly, guided him to his seat. No hesitation, no judgment. And as he looked around with wide eyes, he caught mine. We shared a smile. For the first time, I felt like maybe we were building a world where kids like him wouldn't have to fight so hard to prove they belong. That's why I keep telling this story, because it's not about a seat. It's about who we decide has a right to take up space, to be treated with respect. And if me being embarrassed on a plane for half an hour helped change even a fraction of that, it was worth it. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated, misjudged, or made to feel like you didn't belong? Or maybe you've caught yourself judging someone else too quickly. Tell me your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. Hit, like, if you believe in standing up with dignity, Subscribe for more stories that pull back the curtain on how the world really works, and share this with someone who needs a reminder. Nobody can take your seat if you refuse to give up your voice.